The rain continued to fall in thin sheets outside the lonely motel, as Marion Crane followed Norman Bates into the small, dimly lit office. The register lay open on the desk, a pen resting beside it. Norman's voice was soft, almost shy as he offered her a cabin. "You'll be comfortable here," he assured her, his smile wavering at the edges. He handed her a key, number 1, the room closest to his office. Marion signed the register, hesitating for a moment before writing her real name. Somewhere deep down, she wondered if honesty in this small detail might protect her from the heavier dishonesty she carried in her purse. Norman noticed her weariness. "If you'd like," he said, "I can bring you some supper. Just a sandwich, some milk. It's not much, but it's something." Marion agreed, though something in his tone struck her strangely. There was a boyish charm in his words, but also a nervous edge, as if conversation itself was a performance he hadn't quite mastered. She followed him into a parlor behind the office, where stuffed birds filled the shelves and walls. Their glass eyes gleamed in the lamplight, wings frozen mid-flight, beaks open in silent shrieks. Marion shivered. "You do a lot of taxidermy?" she asked carefully. Norman nodded, his face lighting up with a strange pride. "Yes, birds mostly. They're easier to stuff than most animals. And they're still pretty when they're preserved." Marion's eyes roamed over the collection. To her, the creatures seemed tragic. Frozen lives, trapped forever in imitation of flight. As they sat, Norman placed the tray before her. Bread, cheese, a bottle of milk. The simple supper seemed almost too humble, yet she thanked him warmly. The conversation turned, as conversations often do, to family. Marion spoke of her sister, of responsibilities, of the weight of choices. Norman, however, spoke of his mother. "She's ill," he admitted, his gaze dropping. "She needs me. She wouldn't survive without me." There was a bitterness in his voice, a mixture of devotion and resentment. Marion sensed it immediately. "Sometimes," she offered gently, "a person needs to live their own life, not just sacrifice everything." Norman's expression hardened, his voice sharpened like a knife. "A son is a poor excuse for a man if he leaves his mother. A boy's best friend is his mother." The silence that followed was suffocating. Marion forced a small smile, thanking him again before excusing herself to her room. Norman's eyes followed her retreating figure with an intensity that chilled her. Inside cabin 1, Marion closed the door and leaned against it, her breath unsteady. She thought of Sam. She thought of the stolen money hidden in her bag. And she thought of Norman's strange words. In the bathroom, she ran the shower. The water poured over her like absolution, washing away the weight of her decision. In that moment, she decided she would return the money. She would set things right. Sam would love her for her honesty, not her crime. Her relief lasted only seconds. Through the translucent curtain, a shadow moved. The door creaked open, slow, deliberate. A figure entered, tall, feminine in shape, hair pinned back. In her hand gleamed a butcher's knife. Before Marion could scream, the curtain was torn aside. The blade rose, then fell again and again, slashing through steam and skin. Marion's screams pierced the night, echoing against tile and glass, fading into choked silence as her body collapsed against the tub. Water and blood spiraled together down the drain, circling endlessly before vanishing. The figure retreated, silent, closing the door with eerie calm. Norman's cry split the silence minutes later. "Mother, what have you done?" He rushed into the bathroom, his horror painted across his face. Marion's body lay crumpled, lifeless, her eyes wide, her lips parted in one last gasp of terror. Trembling, Norman set to work. He wrapped the body, scrubbing away every trace of blood with frantic precision. He carried Marion to her car, stuffed her belongings inside, and drove it to the nearby swamp. The headlights glowed briefly as the car sank into the black water, swallowed whole by the earth itself. When the last ripple faded, silence returned. Norman stood on the bank, his chest heaving, whispering to himself, whispering to Mother. Days passed. Marion's disappearance did not go unnoticed. In Phoenix, her sister Lila Crane grew frantic. She had not heard from Marion, and neither had Sam Loomis. At the same time, a private investigator named Arbogast began asking questions. He was sharp, relentless, and hired by those who wanted the stolen money found. Arbogast traced Marion's trail step by careful step. He discovered the car trade, the motel, and finally the polite young man who owned it. Norman Bates greeted him with that same boyish charm, but the detective's eyes narrowed. Something felt wrong. He asked about a young woman who might have stayed there. Norman hesitated, fumbled. His words contradicted themselves. Arbogast noticed the grand house on the hill. "Does your mother live there?" he asked casually. Norman stiffened. She's ill. She doesn't see people." Suspicion deepened. Arbogast promised he'd return with more questions, but he never did. That evening, Arbogast entered the Bates house. The stairwell loomed before him, its shadows stretching long in the lamplight. He climbed step by cautious step, the silence pressing against him. At the top, a figure emerged. A woman. The same silhouette Marion had seen, the knife struck without warning. Arbogast staggered backward, his body crashing down the stairs, the blade flashing again before darkness swallowed him whole. When Arbogast failed to return, Lila and Sam knew something was terribly wrong. Together, they traveled to the Bates Motel. Sam confronted Norman, keeping him distracted while Lila slipped toward the looming house. The halls smelled of dust and age. A faint odor of rot lingered in the air. Lila's heart pounded as she climbed the stairs, drawn toward the bedroom she believed belonged to Norman's mother. Inside, the bed was indented, as though someone had been lying there moments before. But the air was stale, lifeless. She searched further, descending into the cellar. There, in the dim light, she saw a figure seated in a chair. A woman, her back turned, hair silver against the lamplight. "Mrs. Bates?" Lila whispered, stepping closer. The chair spun slowly, revealing not a living woman but a withered corpse, skin shriveled, mouth open in eternal scream. Lila shrieked, stumbling backward. At that moment, Norman burst into the cellar, dressed in a faded dress and wig, a knife raised high. His voice shrieked in falsetto, "I am Mother." Before the blade could fall, Sam tackled him to the ground. The knife clattered across the floor. Norman thrashed and howled, the mask of his mother slipping away to reveal the broken man beneath. Later, at the police station, the truth unraveled. Norman Bates had long ago murdered his mother and her lover, unable to bear her devotion to another man. The guilt shattered him, splitting his mind into two. One half remained Norman, timid and polite. The other half resurrected his mother, jealous and cruel, controlling his every thought. Whenever desire threatened Norman, whenever he felt drawn to a woman, Mother took over. She struck, silencing temptation with cold steel. Norman himself vanished, consumed entirely by her voice. In the final cell, he sat motionless, a blanket around his shoulders. His eyes glowed with eerie calm as Mother whispered inside his mind. "They think I couldn't hurt a fly," he murmured softly, smiling faintly. His gaze fixed on the ceiling, serene in his madness. The swamp still held Marion's car. The money was gone. Lives had been shattered, and the house on the hill loomed still, its windows dark, its walls forever haunted by the secret of Norman Bates.